This time, though, there will be the understanding that if they ignore this summons, that there will be consequences.
That means that they may actually issue a warrant for Kristian Firth's arrest and send the RCMP out to get him. Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. We have breaking news regarding the arrivescam scandal and GC strategies. It appears that the Conservatives have been repeatedly trying to get Kristian Firth to reappear before committee, and Firth has been refusing to do so, citing a number of excuses. Well, now it seems that the Conservatives have finally decided that enough is enough, and now may resort to apprehending Kristian Firth in order to force him to answer for his lies.
We would like to thank one of our viewers, Platinum Sniper, for bringing this video to our attention. Now let's get to it.
Good morning. I'm here with my colleague Andrew Shears as the Government Operations Committee is set to meet this afternoon, where Common Sense Conservatives will put forward a motion summoning the principals of GC Strategies to appear before the Government Operations Committee. Now, GC Strategies, of course, is the two-person firm who worked on Justin Trudeau's $60 million arrivescam scandal. But this app had this $20 million contract where this company did no actual IT work, and they have now twice refused to appear, having been summoned by committee. And the effect of today's motion will be to use the full power of the House of Commons to have these individuals appear before committee. It's incredibly important when we have this report from the Auditor General that revealed that this $60 million scandal with this app that wrongly imprisoned 10,000 Canadians, wrongly quarantined them, didn't have proper management oversight and no cost controls, and of course revealed that the app cost many millions more than the government had first disclosed. So today's motion is critical, and it's going to be a real test of the NDP Liberal coalition, because we're going to find out if the NDP are prepared to provide the accountability and answers that Canadians deserve in Justin Trudeau's latest scandal. And this is the minimum that they can do. We understand that they've been in the practice of helping Justin Trudeau cover up his scandals, but in this case, Canadians deserve answers and accountability, and that's what our motion is calling for today.
Okay, so that's the first part of this. So what does he mean when they're using the full power of the House of Commons? Well, that means that they may actually issue a warrant for Kristian Firth's arrest and send the RCMP out to get him.
There's a document that I'm looking at. It says the rights to institute inquiries require the attendance of witnesses and to order the production of documents. And this is relating to Parliament. First line says, by virtue of preamble in Section 18 of the Constitution Act 1867, Parliament has the ability to institute its own inquiries, to require the attendance of witnesses, and to order the production of documents, rights which are fundamental to its proper functioning. So because Kristian Firth is refusing to attend, and he is considered to be a witness and to have information that is relevant for Parliament in order to do its work, and he's refusing not only to appear voluntarily, he's refusing a summons now. A summons, as we've mentioned in the past, is not, will you please come to committee? It's, you are expected to come to committee, and you are expected to do so by a certain date. It sounds like he's now refusing to do that. So now they are going to have the RCMP bring him in.
Yeah, and the only way that's going to work is if the NDP vote with them. Now, I tend to lean towards the position that the NDP are going to do that, because they don't want to be associated with this scandal at all, and they've been criticizing the Trudeau government as it relates to the arrivescam scandal all last week after the Auditor General report was released. So, and given the fact that they may actually end up with a separation of the supply and confidence agreement in less than 2 weeks, I think it's in their best interest to vote with the Conservatives and the Bloc on this. So We will see what happens. As we're recording this, OGO committee is meeting. So we'll be providing an update later today on what actually happens. But let's continue the press conference and the statement now from Andrew Shear.
This seems like a pretty extraordinary measure. I'm just wondering if you can talk about, as a former speaker, how rare is it that you would see the sergeant-at-arms hauling somebody before a committee?
Well, it is very rare, and it's unfortunate that it's come to this point. But it's essential that we use this tool if these individuals continue to ignore. So we're going to summon them again. And this time, though, there will be the understanding that if they ignore this summons, that there will be consequences. There is a recent precedent. Speaker Milliken did issue a subpoena to compel testimony from a witness, and law enforcement agencies cooperated with that. Yes, it's rare, but we're talking about at least $60 million of taxpayers' money that the government used the pandemic as an excuse to ignore the rules. We just heard from committee today that decisions were made to relax rules and to relax requirements for things like testing, updates to the app, to forego the usual bidding process. We have to make sure that Canadians understand what happened during the pandemic, not just with their money, but with their lives as well, with many of them being forced to quarantine for no reason. We heard today that at least 10,000 people were wrongly given quarantine orders because of a glitch in the app. I mean, we're talking about 10,000 people who had to quarantine at their own expense, many of whom would have missed shifts at work or missed important life events, and that's unacceptable. So the fact that these two individuals have already ignored previous requests is not just unfortunate, but it's a sign of grave disrespect to Canadian taxpayers. And now it's up to the Liberals and NDP to vote with us to ensure that Canadians find the truth.
So, former Speaker of the House, Andrew Shear knows his stuff when it comes to parliamentary history, as he needs to. So you heard the reporter talk about the Sergeant-at-Arms, and that's the historic example that comes with this. But they're not going to send, for example, the Sergeant-at-Arms, across the country to go and get somebody. As Andrew Shear said in the past, there is relatively recent examples of this. And, what they do now is they enlist the cooperation of law enforcement agencies as applicable in order to comply with the order. So could be the Sergeant of Arms, could be the provincial police, could be the RCMP. But the act is to actually put out a warrant to bring that person in.
Yeah, because the last time the Sergeant of Arms was requested to go and bring someone into committee, I believe it was 1913, so over 100 years ago. And back then it really was the Sergeant at Arms, and often it was on horseback. Like many of the examples we have of people refusing to go to committee was back in the late 1800s.
Right. And, there is some recent examples of, issuing a warrant to bring somebody actually out of prison because they were detained in a different investigation. They were willing to come, but they still had to issue a warrant regardless in order to actually extract that person from confinement. So, they didn't send the Sergeant at Arms for that. They would have, enlisted the assistance of different law enforcement agencies, as well as the guards and the warden at the prison itself to actually comply with the order. So this is serious stuff, folks.
And this is very unique. As we've said, the last time that this happened in this capacity was over 100 years ago.
With the rarity of this, can you just walk us through the process of what would happen if the Sergeant-at-Arms was sent out to go execute this warrant?
Well, we're going to take this one step at a time. Today, the message today is calling on the NDP and the Liberals to vote in favor of our motion to demand that these individuals come with the appropriate remedy if they don't. There will be options available to the Speaker and to the Sergeant-at-Arms, but in the past there has been cooperation between the House of Commons and law enforcement agencies to ensure that Parliament's orders are respected.
Est-ce que les stratégies ont ignoré ou refusé de se présenter?
Cette approche,
That is a valid reason.
cette approche cet après-midi.
They're apparently said that they're facing harassment, threats, that kind of stuff. Do you see that as a valid reason for not showing up at a committee?
When you take contracts from the Government of Canada, when you take taxpayers' money, you have to be accountable for that. If there are questions that members of Parliament have on behalf of Canadian taxpayers, and absolutely there's an obligation to answer for that.
What a silly question. Oh, well, they've cited, the reason why they're not coming is harassment and all this stuff. Okay, you're not being harassed by the government.
Oh, he probably thinks he is.
Oh, he probably thinks he is. And look where we're at, right? There's evidence that you literally colluded with the CBSA. This is criminal behavior, guys. You have admitted to fraud in front of committee and in front of millions of Canadians. You just don't want to come back because you're afraid to face Brock and the rest of them because they're going to get even more out of you.
Well, and the other thing, if you're receiving threats, which, you know, it's a possibility. I'm not saying it's not possible, but Parliament has the entire RCMP at their disposal. I'm sure that they could set up some additional security to make sure that you're safe and not accosted on your way into committee.
Right, and maybe if you'd actually done everything above board and not committed criminal activity, maybe you wouldn't be receiving emails and phone calls from angry Canadians. How about that?
Do you have any... What percent of the NDP decided to vote against your motion today?
We have seen the NDP at multiple occasions defend and protect Justin Trudeau, not just for policy outcomes, not just because it's part of some kind of a deal on policy outcomes or an NDP wish list, but to protect Justin Trudeau from being personally embarrassed by scandal and corruption. If the NDP vote against our motion this afternoon, it is crystal clear now they're not actually interested in cleaning up Justin Trudeau's corruption and scandals, that they're not actually interested in a different approach, that they are interested in keeping Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister for as long as possible.
Do you have any evidence?
There you go. So they have thrown the gauntlet down at the feet of the NDP. And they said, hey, here you go.
Your move.
Your move, guys, because you cannot continue to walk this line of criticizing the Liberals at the same time refusing to call the main guy in right now, the main guy that has most of this information, in order to expose the corruption and all of the elements of criminality that have been discovered in the arrivescam scandal. So if you literally vote against that, Canadians have nothing for you. And Jagmeet, you've been talking a big game over the last week over pharmacare and how, Trudeau is corrupt and all of this stuff and the arrivescan scandal and all of this stuff. You've talked a huge game about this. Well, it's time to put up or shut up.